Welcome back to Sailing El Jaleo. This week we continue our trek north where we run into some much needed dredging in the Ashepoo-Coosaw Cut, and while we're going through the cut, our headsail sheet actually tears free from the sail, which creates a problem, and I did the best I could. We couldn't anchor, so I couldn't fix it, and as a result the headsail did sustain some damage. So we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. After spending an evening anchored behind Hilton Head Island, we made our way down Skull Creek, across Port Royal Sound, and up the Beaufort River to Beaufort, South Carolina. As we got underway, I went through my normal morning routine. I'm one of those freaks that always wears my life jacket. It's kind of like a seatbelt. It feels kind of weird if it's not on. And a lot of times you won't see me wearing it when I'm pulling up the chain because it can get in the way when I'm pulling up the chain, but as soon as I get back to the cockpit, I always put it on. And I always do wear long sleeve shirts as well, 99% of the time to protect from the sun. And I do wear sunscreen, which really stinks. I don't like sunscreen. I hate it, especially when it's cold out and you have to slather it on when it's cold. But I've burned my face enough times to know that I just gotta wear it. And as you can see, I am decked out in my best attire this morning. I don't know if they're long shorts or short pants, but whatever they are, they're epoxy stained, as is my shirt, and I'm wearing my lovely Han Solo tube socks. And I think as soon as I get back to Delaware, I'm going to have to take my GoPros back to Best Buy and trade them out. These ones are really weird. They've got this feature that I can't turn off. It adds like 40 pounds right around your waist. I can't figure out how to turn that function off, and it's always there. Damn you, beer. It was a very calm day as we headed out into Port Royal Sound, and that allowed me to sit down and steer with my leg and give my shoulder a much needed break. When I'm going through narrow rivers and waterways, I like to stand up and steer so I can see better. Once we get out into big waterways, it's easier to sit down and I can actually use my knee to steer. And as you may know from previous videos, I did lose my autopilot early on in this trip, so I've been hand steering the entire way to Florida and back. So my shoulder feels a little loose in its socket after all of that. So new autopilot, or repairing the autopilot, is number one on the list when we get to Delaware. We anchored for the evening just north of Beaufort, South Carolina, and since we had plenty of daylight left, I got Frank and Beans out, and the puppy dogs and I went for a little ride to explore the area.
Ready to sail into the wind, heading west to find my reason, longing for something greater than this, and I'm ripe with anticipation. Staring at the starry ceiling, a dream in my heart, yeah, this is just the start. My suitcase is packed and I'm wheeling. I'm on the move, out into the great wide open. Look out, world, here I come, hoist up my sails and ride the wind. Climb to the top of a mountain, fly around the world over
Hey y'all, we're just leaving Beaufort, South Carolina now, and we're heading for the Ashepoo-Coosaw Cutoff, which at low tide there are reports from the Coast Guard that it's only 3 feet deep, so we'll be getting there about low tide, but I want to catch the current going out so we're not struggling against the current the whole way to the cutoff. And then we'll anchor once we get there and just wait a while. And I'd rather go through it when the tide's coming in rather than going out. But it's kind of funny. There was a 30% chance of rain, but I wanted to get to the cutoff today because it's just going to keep getting worse, the timing with the tides. And so I decided to go anyway. And every other time when there's a 30% chance it doesn't rain, but it is sprinkling right now, which I just find is comical. It's just a couple of drops, but it's funny. The one time I decided to say, hey, let's just go, it actually rains. You can actually see some more rain over that way, but I think that'll miss us. So we're in good shape. I think should only take us about 3 hours to get to the cutoff. Then we'll anchor right outside the cutoff and wait until probably 4 o'clock tonight, and then go through, and then just anchor once we get through the Coosaw Cut and the Ashepoo Cut, which is only a couple of miles. Then we'll be on the other side of it and we'll be good, and we can anchor in the Ashepoo River. But yeah, there's a bunch of sailboats that went through there before me. Maybe I can find out from one of them what kind of depths they were seeing. You know, I really don't like going through cuts that I know are shallow when the tide is going out like it is now. If you get hung up when the tide is going out, then you're in trouble. Especially around here, because the tides are 7 feet. So, you know, if we got stuck and you know, the tide's going to lose another 5 feet in the next few hours, we'd be on our side, and then we'd probably take on water when the tide came back in. So I'd much rather go through the cut when the tide is coming in, because if we get caught up or hung up, then at least the rising tide could get us unstuck. And plus it just gives you more time to figure out how to get out of it. So yeah, I don't like going through shallow cuts when the tide's going out. It's probably just a me thing. I'm sure everyone else does it, but better safe than sorry. I've got all the time in the world, but I don't have another boat. So anyways, hope y'all are well. Hey y'all, we're arriving at the Ashepoo-Coosaw Cut, and it is at dead low tide. Actually, it's not even dead low tide yet. It's going to go out about another half a foot. And I read that they were doing dredging, and there is a dredge sitting right outside here. And I just talked to Chasing 80, who is this power boat behind us, and they were supposed to complete dredging of the cut yesterday. So as much as I don't really care to, I think I might try to go through it now. For better or worse. And I'm kind of going slow here, hoping that this power boat, Chasing 80, will catch up and go through first. I might slow down. All right, fingers crossed. Well, there's a boat just coming out of the cut, and I'm right behind Chasing 80 here. Hopefully we'll get a depth report from this guy here, and we'll see. But he made it through okay, and he said his draft was 5 feet, and I'm 5.5. So yeah, I guess we'll find out what Chasing 80 says. Well, two boats went through, one with a 5-foot draft, one with 4.5. And he lost a reading on his depth gauge. It was 0. And I draft 5.5. and the current there is really wicked right now, he said. So I am going to play it safe and just go and anchor for a couple of hours. The tide will be shifting here within the next 20-30 minutes. If I give it a couple of hours, it'll be up a few feet, and then we won't have to worry about it, which I think is better. And you have to pass pretty close to that dredge there. And with the current going against the current, I don't have much power. So if the swirling current were to throw me against the dredge, I mean, it very easily could. He said he was fighting it. So I think it's better just to pull off over here on the side and anchor and play it safe. Alrighty. We anchored for a couple of hours waiting for the tide to come in, and after about an hour and a half, the tide had gone up about 1.5 feet, and we decided to go ahead and give it a try. Just as I was pulling up the anchor, another sailboat came by, and it was a perfect opportunity to let someone else be the guinea pig. As the first boat went through, they did stray a little bit too far away from the dredge, and they actually ran aground. That's why I did a little circle there to give them time to get stuck. And they did get freed relatively quickly, and they circled behind me, and now I was the lead guinea pig. When I went through, I passed as close to the dredge as I felt comfortable doing, and I actually saw 12 feet deep right next to the dredge, so I could have actually made it through without even anchoring. But that's okay, you know, waiting and anchoring was the right decision, so I'm 100% okay with that. The other sailboat followed the same path that I had gone through, and they made it through no problem as well. As we went through the Ashepoo and Coosaw cuts, the current was very strong in that area, and we were just crawling. So the wind was in a favorable direction, so I decided to get the headsail up and see if we could get a little bit of a boost from the wind. And that's when stuff went sideways. Well, here we have a development that has never happened before. We lost our headsail sheet, so she's flapping in the wind and it's unrolled, so I'm gonna have to... The wind is blowing really hard out of this direction, but I'm gonna try and anchor just up here. There's some shallow spots, so I'm gonna try and anchor so I can pull that down, and hopefully the wind isn't too bad that I can get that retied. But I don't know, this tug over here is kind of right where I was hoping to anchor, so I don't know. I guess we'll see. I'm glad we got out of the wind. That was really flapping for a while there, so hopefully I can find a spot over here to duck in and anchor. By the time I found a safe enough spot to anchor, we were back in the brunt of the wind, and I did get a little bit frazzled. I couldn't roll it up anymore. The way the furler works, I ran out of rope because it was unwinding itself. So I couldn't furl it anymore, and the sail was flapping in the wind, and it was actually hitting the baby stay, which is that wire at the front of the boat you can see that goes up to the top of the mast. It was hitting the baby stay, and it was damaging the headsail. By the time I figured out which halyard it was and I got the sail pulled down, there is a line that runs in on the outer edge of that sail, and part of that had wrapped around the baby shroud and had actually pulled a seam out on the sail about 1/4 of the way up. I had to cut that line. There was nothing else I could do. I couldn't get up the baby shroud to get it untangled, so I had to cut it, and it also damaged the sunshade, and there was some damage already on the sunshade. It was something that I had planned on replacing, but now that there is actual structural damage to the sail, I feel like I'm going to have to get it to a sail maker to repair properly, which is fine. The sail does still work. I can use the headsail still, but it was just one of those things that you don't really ever plan for, and yeah, not my best hour. I could have handled it a lot better. In retrospect, when I replay it in my mind, there are things that I could have done differently to get it down quicker and reduce the damage. But, you know, when you're single-handing and something like this happens for the first time, yeah, you just kind of have to figure it out. And unfortunately, I couldn't, there was nowhere. I was in a narrow passage, so there's really nowhere I could anchor when it actually happened. So I had to let it ride for a while, and you know, that's just the way things work out sometimes. Once I got the sail down, it was way too windy that day to try and do anything with it, and I didn't want the sail blowing away, so I just got out some rope and I lashed it down so it wouldn't go anywhere. The next day it was going to be windy as well, so I knew I wouldn't have an opportunity to fix it then. And the problem with the sail being off is that it was located where I would normally put the chain for the anchor. So I kind of couldn't go anywhere until I could get the headsail back on. So not the next day, but the day after, there was a calm window where I was able to get the headsail back on. When the wind finally died down, it was time to attempt to get the headsail back on. And while the sail was flapping around originally, it had unwound itself, so I knew the furler was out of alignment, and I didn't know exactly how to get that back into alignment without putting the headsail on first and just trying it to see how far out of whack it was. And in retrospect, now that I know more about how it works, I could have skipped that step, but it got me to the end result, and you know, now I know more about how it works. So I did put the headsail back on, I wound it up, I found out that I was about 6 turns out of whack on the furler. So I did have to take the headsail back off, and I actually had to detach it completely from the furler, and the furler, I don't know what it's called at the top, the slide maybe, I don't know, whatever that piece is, and realign the furler and then reattach the sail and put it back up. So it was a little bit of an ordeal, but yeah, it's one of those things you figure out on the fly. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos. And my Patreon crew is Joan and Judy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Lindbo, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotton. Thank you guys so very much. Your support really means the world to me. If you do like our videos, please... I screwed that up. If you're interested in joining our Patreon crew, there is a link in the description down below that'll take you to our Patreon page where you can sign up, and that'll give you access to a ton of bonus boy, I'm just not getting through this. A ton of bonus content, including photos and videos, with a lot of real-time updates, what's going on, and where we're at and what we're doing. And also, you'd help support the channel, which would be awesome. And if you do like our content, our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. You know, I should probably re-record this, but it's been a long video. I'm done. All right. I hope you guys are well. I'll see you next week. As we headed out into Port Royal Sound, it was a very calm day, and this allowed me to sit down and give my shoulder a much-needed break. As I've mentioned before, I did lose my autopilot on the way down, so... Hi, Wiegand! So I had steered almost the entire way to Florida. Come on, Wee! What's going on? Oh boy, that's what I get to listen to all day. And so I lost it. Wiegand, I'm trying to get something done here. Can you pipe down for 1 second? Well, can you just pipe down for a little bit? Just for a minute or two. You make this really difficult. Yes, you do.